everyone, and welcome to the Edtech Podcast and this guest episode from the EdSurge mini-series, Second Acts, which explores the lives of three adult lifelong learners pondering a return to university. Shout out to Jeff Young at EdSurge for recording these episodes, which put the struggles of adult learners front and centre. Listeners, I'd love to hear your thoughts. At a time when MOOCs are going through another major convulsion here in the UK and tweets of empty lecture halls go viral, what resonates? Are unis or college still the answer? And what does the learning design look like? And where are the gaps? A shout out to WorkTripp and Lumina Foundation for supporting this episode. Here we go.
For many students who drop out of college and later return to finish their degree, that decision to go back is primarily practical, about advancing in their careers. And that was definitely the case for Gina Peterson, a 42-year-old in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. She had done a year at the local Kirkwood Community College right after high school, but she stopped out because she just wasn't sure what she wanted to major in or do with her life. Years later, it was a coworker who started nudging her to go back to school.
She was like, you have to look into this. Because I had made mention a couple of times about going back. You know, it was like, oh, man, I really want to get out of this position, yada, yada, yada. And she's like, if you're serious, Kirkwood has a program where it's, 6 to 8 week classes and you're done after you finish, the certain set of classes.
The efficiency of that plan really appealed to Gina. So she finally signed up for classes and started the program while keeping her full-time job for a local tech company. Other students return to college because they see a window of opportunity opening that could help them find a new path. For Tim Lum, a 34-year-old in Honolulu, that window of opportunity was the COVID-19 pandemic. Tim had tried an auto mechanic school just after high school graduation long ago. And for years, he had wanted to try college. He was also getting more and more concerned that the 2 jobs that he had been working in restaurants just weren't enough anymore to keep him afloat. So when those restaurants shut down at the start of the pandemic back in March 2020, he made the shift.
I was like, oh man, we're going to get him unemployment. I'm going to have all this time. I'm going back to college. I thought I had, oh man, this is my only chance. This is the only chance that I'll have so much time.
Tim was so excited to make the most of this moment that he enrolled in not 1, but 2 programs. He started an online coding boot camp through Kingsland University. And he also started an associate's degree at a local community college, Kapai-Olanai Community College. But for some students, the desire to return to college and finish a degree is about much more than a career. Paul Carr had stopped out of his dream school, Morehouse College, with just 1 semester to go before graduating. And his plan had always been to go back and finish school as soon as he could. He still hadn't done so a few years after dropping out, when he rushed to his dying father's bedside. And Paul made his dad a promise that no matter what, he would complete that degree. Yet somehow more than 20 years passed since that promise. Paul and his wife raised 3 kids. He started a business and a nonprofit. Going back to get his degree remained that goal in the back of his mind. The thing he meant to do someday. Then that someday happened. Last year, he read an article in the Washington Post with the headline, Morehouse College to launch online program aimed at helping Black men with some credits finish degree. That was his college, Morehouse, the only place he had ever really wanted to go. It was a place he had grown to love in the 3.5 years he spent on its Atlanta campus. And now the college was setting up a program that he could take from his home in the Detroit area. He actually had a sense this was coming because a friend of his who works at Morehouse had given him a heads up. The first day the application opened up, Paul applied.
I think I named the essay, I remember. And I went back and I talked about all of the various things that I remembered about my experience there. And then I talked about remembering what my vow to my father was before he died. But I wanted to draw on those memories and use those feelings, like put myself back in that space of what I was feeling.
Drawing on those memories must have worked because Paul got into the program. And like all the students we spoke to, he was excited about the opportunity to get back on his educational path with a stronger sense of purpose than the first time around. But there were also nerves, because over the years since they'd last been in a classroom, these students had changed. Paul remembers having a voice in his head asking, "Can I hack it?"
It's not a competition, but it is. It's with a competition. You're competing with yourself. Am I going to be able to handle this with being a father and a husband, being at that time a caregiver? I was caring for my mother.
Yeah.
Having a career, can I manage all of this?
Hello and welcome to the EdSurge Podcast, a weekly look at the future of learning. I'm Jeff Young, a reporter and an editor here at EdSurge. This is the second episode of a series we're calling Second Acts, where we're digging into the struggles of returning adult college students. Over this 3-episode narrative series, we're following the educational journeys of 3 college students from different backgrounds and different parts of the country. Along the way, we'll also meet some of their professors, academic coaches, and other folks working to help them succeed. And we hope to get beyond the typical recommendations of policy briefs and white papers and get at the heart of the college completion effort. In our first episode last month, we told the story of how Gina, Tim, and Paul stalled out of their first attempt at post-secondary education. And we learned the complicated set of reasons that led to that decision. This week, we're going to find out what their return to the classroom was like, what the colleges did to spur them on, and the ups and downs of being back. Gina works from home for her day job, so she has no commute to her online classes at Kirkwood Community College. She does her work and school in the very same room. And many days she starts into her college work right after clocking out of the job. She jokes that she kind of pivots in her chair to symbolize the change into study mode.
I'm in this room 12 hours a day. Between work and doing schoolwork and stuff like that, I eat 2 meals in this room a day, at least, sometimes 3. And it's got no curtains. That way I can get all the sunshine. And it doesn't seem like I'm, trapped and captured.
The program that she's in at Kirkwood is called Flex Forward, and it follows an educational model known as competency-based education. The approach has been slowly growing over the past 10 years or so as a way to try to better fit college into the lives of working adults. The idea of competency-based education is that students can take classes at their own pace, and if they already know something being taught, they can sort of place out of it if they can demonstrate that they have this so-called competency. After all, there are some things adult students like Gina have learned in their careers already. So if Gina feels confident about something on her syllabus, she can race through it, knowing that she'll be able to pass the test on that idea or show she knows the material by doing a required activity.
So this is where all the magic happens.
The magic, and she is being a little sarcastic here, is a pretty dry-looking list of activities and assignments.
Each class has the table of contents, which gives you the whole entirety of the class.
Students are given 7 weeks to get through all that material and turn in the assignments on their own. This online program doesn't have any classes that meet at a set time. In other words, Gina never joins a Zoom room where the professor and the other students are there. Everything is go at your own pace, on your own schedule. In fact, the only contact Gina has with her professors is to turn in her assignments and tests and get them graded. Or if she reaches out to a professor with a question. Some of her favorite profs have checked in by email to see how she's doing, but as she points out, they kind of already know based on her activity in the online system and the scores that she's getting. Gina admits that this format has its pros and cons.
Pros, totally go at your own pace within that 7 weeks. Do it on your own time. You're not adhered to be in a Zoom class at any certain time. things of that nature. But some of the cons of it are you don't get that one-on-one teacher interaction, right? You don't get that face-to-face. You don't get the learning environment. You have to create your own learning environment.
Sometimes that learning environment involves turning to other people in her life. Like the time when she was stuck in a statistics course and asked a good friend who's an aerospace engineer to tutor her a bit on some key concepts. But there is one person at Kirkwood who Gina turns to the most. It's her assigned coach, Megan Airy. Every Tuesday during the program, Gina connects with Megan for half an hour about how things are going.
It's like talking to a friend every week. We have a really great relationship. So some of the call is about personal stuff. Most of the call is about class. Some of the call is about me griping about the class. Some of the call is her talking me off the ledge. Some of the call is, okay, we've gotten it all out of the way. What are your goals for the next week? So the main takeaway of the call, all the other stuff is fantastic, but the main takeaway of the call is, okay, you're at this point of the class. Where do you expect to be next week?
The coach is not there to answer questions about the course material. In fact, I reached out to Megan, Gina's coach, and she notes that business, the focus of Gina's program, is not really her thing.
No, I do not have any business degrees. But that's not what it's about, right? The content belongs to the faculty, and any content questions they have go back to the faculty. I am there as the time management connection to the rest of the college, kind of the program expert outside of course content, which I think is what is really helpful for folks, because when they have a scholarship question or they have a, financial aid is a big deal, especially with working adults who, a lot of them are also paying for their kids here at Kirkwood or other institutions. So I've had a lot of financial aid conversations. I've learned a lot along the way in those areas. But yeah, just talking about, okay, so I know you like to, coach your son's baseball team, and you also do a lot of out-of-town camping. So normally you take a full schedule. I'm thinking part-time for summer because that's just going to fit your life better. And those are conversations the student and I can have that otherwise they might just say like, well, I'll just do what I always do, and they might not fully think about all of the other things that they have going on. And those are the questions that I can ask and the conversations that I can have with them.
Megan has been doing this for years, working with dozens of students every week. I asked her, has she had any of her advisees that slipped away and left the program despite her efforts?
I definitely have folks who step away for super valid reasons, right? Maybe they're welcoming a new baby, they're taking on a really large project at work, they're moving, maybe their financial situations have changed, things like that. Totally valid, and oftentimes those students will take time off, come back. That's the other beauty of our program. It's not lockstep. You can come in and come out. You can take any course at any time. Everything is offered every semester, which is also really great when you're transferring other credits in too, that you don't have to all start at the same place, because they're not. So that way they can really fit it in with how it works for them. Students who are just not successful are often students who procrastinate because 7 weeks goes by really quickly, and you really got to get started right away. Students who miss our meetings, who don't check in with me, those are often students who do not complete. So I think that check-in, that accountability is so important. And sometimes students figure out that this isn't the right format for them. I've had students switch to in-person or regular online because they need those regular due dates. They need to come here in person to be held accountable. And that's okay.
The model has been working for Gina, who especially appreciates those check-ins. She says they've kept her from what has been her biggest obstacle to staying in the program.
It's easy to get distracted is completely not the right word, but it is the right word because, again, life happens. It's easy to get derailed.
After the break, what happens when a returning adult student tries both a coding bootcamp and a traditional college program at the same time? Stay with us.
Hello! Did you know that in a recent Stanford experiment, in-person teams generated about 15% more ideas than virtual teams? And what's more, MIT's Human Dynamics Center found that conversations outside of formal meetings are the most important factor that contributes to team success. That's why we built WorkTripp to supercharge team culture and exceptional performance through off-site and back-at-desk working design. If you're looking to take your team on an off-site this year, make it count. Help re-inject the social learning, new ideas and adventure back into the world of work. Go to worktrip.com and check out our team-specific listings, including venues, experiences, executive coaches, facilitators and speakers. Our vision is to help all teams, from high-growth startups to well-established corporates, to get together, enjoy work and be productive. We scale those aha moments which unlock great things.
In Honolulu, Tim Lum found himself with not one but two college programs to adjust to. Since he started both an online coding bootcamp at a local for-profit university and a 2-year degree at his local community college. And that gave him an interesting window into the differences between a traditional higher ed model and an upstart bootcamp program. He says the teachers he's had at the bootcamp, they knew their stuff, but they were much less experienced at what he called the art of teaching.
And it's definitely more about taking skilled programmers and having them try to teach, people who don't know how to code at all.
And the class sizes at the online coding bootcamp were kind of huge, starting out with about 150 students. Tim says the first classes felt tedious and chaotic.
It's because it's online as well as a group of 150 people. Like, it felt like it would take forever just to get past, downloading a program. And then you have, because they say, you don't have to know how to do anything. All you have to do is turn on your computer. And that was terrible because you have, these people who, it's like, oh my God, where's the file? And that one person out of the 150, it takes like 10 minutes just for them to figure out how to open up a file kind of thing. And that was an ongoing process for at least the first few months. And then, the class whittles down. And then finally, you have a group of people that understand at least a decent amount of information. But yeah, like there's, everybody's paying about $10,000 to $15,000, and they're all like, I want a new life. Basically, that's what it felt like they're saying, by coding, through coding.
Tim could definitely relate. He was there for a new life, too. And he says the demographics of the students were very different in the coding bootcamp versus the community college. In the bootcamp, most of the students had first done a trade school, like he had. And many seemed skeptical of traditional college. Just like in Gina's case, everything at Tim's bootcamp happens online. But unlike Gina's competency-based program, the bootcamp happens mostly in live Zoom sessions.
It would be 3 live sessions per week, 2 5-hour sessions, and 1 8-hour session with a hour lunch break. So 16, 17 hours of in-class time.
That's a lot.
It definitely is. And I mean, I wasn't used to sitting at the computer for so long. So even that takes some time. And getting blue light glasses, because my eyes, I don't know. I definitely understand how tiring it is just to sit in front of a computer all day.
The bootcamp does have the benefit of focus, he says, since it was designed to help prepare students for what a certain kind of computer programmer needs to know.
The best thing the coding bootcamp did is kind of show you how a senior developer thinks and how they work, but as well as, of course, you learn the languages at the same time too. But college education will definitely give you the skill set, understanding of how to create the programs that developers use. And then I guess that's why I know that's why it takes so much longer, because you need all these levels of math, and you need to have like these really in-depth, detailed discussions on what a program really is, hardware and software.
Tim also gives props to the coding bootcamp for focusing on helping students with their career skills. To do that, the university worked with a company called Pathrise.
It was like kind of like another class that we took on the side that helped us, create a resume, as well as work on our LinkedIn, go over interview questions, negotiation, and kind of how to get a job after. I think because it was so specialized specifically for full stack development, it wasn't like, oh, what direction do you want to take?
Meanwhile, Tim has generally had more positive experiences with his teachers in the community college courses, which have all been online because of the pandemic. They mostly took place on Zoom as well. This past semester, Tim was taking classes in chemistry, pre-calculus, art, theater, and he had an online chemistry lab. He says the consistency of the curriculum and assessments at the community college have been higher than the Wild West feel of the boot camp. Even so, Tim admits that some professors at the community college are far better than others at working with a non-traditional student like himself.
Especially within the first week or two, I can tell, if an instructor can understand different perspectives. And so from that point, it kind of decides for me like whether I want to continue asking questions or just, get whatever information I need from them, and then whatever else online.
For the community college professors he doesn't feel connected with, Tim says he's more likely to just rely on going back over recordings of those classes to dig out what he needs when it comes to doing homework or to study. And he says he often pauses those lecture videos when he's lost to go find a YouTube video that explains the same material better. But Tim says there are other professors who go out of their way for him.
If you ask them, they're like, oh, they'll make an effort, or they can actually explain it in a different way. It's really nice when a teacher can give different examples, like one real life example, as well as, maybe a more logical, like chart, factual based example, like the different learning styles.
One example of that is his favorite professor, John Rader. He admires this professor, even though Tim failed one of his classes in pre-calculus and had to retake it.
He has a great way of speaking, and you can tell that he's like utilized his skills in speaking and translates that into math. He has catchphrases, he engages, he pushes his students to respond, or else he doesn't move forward. And he puts in that extra work. He tries to find every angle he possibly can in order to help you, which is really cool.
Rader is an assistant professor of math at the community college, and he's been teaching there for about 10 years. His specialty is teaching math courses that prepare students for science tracks. The professor had never taught an online course before the pandemic. And then suddenly, he was teaching everything online. When COVID first reared up, he had just 48 hours to convert his in-person courses to online. Whichever way he's teaching, he says he tries to convey that he wants to help students succeed.
I think that my message comes across to the students, whether it's that I'm here for them, that I'm present, that I'm actively engaging, and I want you to be actively engaged and to try and to not worry about, being wrong. There's nothing wrong with being wrong. You learn through mistakes. You learn through those things. Better to be wrong in class than to be wrong on the exam, This professor says he's really missed being able to read the room, especially since he doesn't require his students to turn on their cameras in Zoom classes. Many of his students are returning adults. He says that over the years, when he's taught courses that are in the evening, as many as half fit that description. And they usually make themselves known. But I can definitely tell the older adults because they're typically the ones that will come up to you first out of all the students. Hey, I want you to know who I am. And, I'm going back to school. I worked in this. They always are the ones that are forthcoming. It's the 18-year-olds that will be like, they'll show up, they'll take their notes, they'll get their syllabus, and then they'll walk out and not have a conversation with you. It's the older adults that are just like, hey, I was in the military, or, it's really refreshing to have a conversation with an adult who, is rational.
I asked how he got to know Tim when everything's online and they've never actually met in person.
I think that I've had enough conversations with him because he's come to office hours, because he engages in class. He tries to, participate in the classroom and, do more than just show up, take notes, and go home. Or in this case, turn on Zoom, take notes, and turn off Zoom. And that's the thing. That's what I encourage all my students to do is you need to be communicating with your professors. We're not just a knowledge resource. The library can do that. You can go to the library and find out everything about college algebra or trigonometry that you wanted to. You could read the book. But why is it that we specifically rely on teachers to engage in the way that we do? Why do we have classes set up the way that we do? And so, part of it is, we're experts in our field, and we should be good at teaching. That's a whole nother story for another conversation. Not every teacher is a good teacher. But for students, we're also resources not just for knowledge. We're resources for experience on that and engagement. The students who end up being very successful in college are the ones that, yes, they have to study, and yes, they have to learn how to take tests, and yes, they have to learn how to return knowledge back to the professor, in the format that they want. But I think it's the ones who really engage with their professors, the ones who realize that we have knowledge that's beyond the classroom. We know what it's like to be a college student. All of us know what it's like to at least be a master's student. So we can, talk about those levels, and we know the pathways that they're going on to. So career-wise, we know where students are going to go. If you're interested in physics, my first question is, well, what do you want to do in physics? And I have a physics background, just so we're clear also. But when students tell me, oh, yeah, I love physics, I'm like, well, if you want to study physics, what do you want to do? Do you want to do theoretical physics? Do you want to do engineering? And then they say, oh, engineering. All right, what do you want to do? Mechanical, chemical, electrical, bioengineering? I think that we have these knowledge and information that they don't even consider. And I feel sad for those students who don't even use us as that resource. They just go on their own, and they have the internet nowadays, which is great, but it can be overwhelming.
Unlike Gina, who is in a community college program tailored to adult students, Tim's community college program is just the standard offering. Though he says he has taken advantage of the college's financial support systems to help stay in school.
The college actually helped me to survive the pandemic. Maybe not as much as unemployment, but definitely there are times where I was like, oh man, unemployment has come in, I have zero in the bank account, what am I going to do? And then the college, sends out information on equity, basically a program where, you receive money for being a student, who is going through a financial difficulty. And, that happened maybe 3 or 4 times. And each time I received probably about $1,000, maybe $1,500. And it definitely helped me to survive as well as continue, going to school. Otherwise, I would probably have to quit school and go back to work, full time.
One thing that is most connected Tim to campus turned out to be the college's student government, called Student Congress. Tim ran uncontested for vice president. And he says the job pays about $11 an hour and takes up 2 to 10 hours per week. It has given him a window into the struggles of other students and has introduced him to the programs the college has to fill those gaps. The Student Congress has met with school administrators and even done surveys of students during the pandemic to see what their challenges are.
Through our survey recently, we found out that, money problems and school workload are the 2 top problems or most stressful things for our students currently at KCC.
Even with all the supports that he's found, Tim says he has faced plenty of challenges. One of those challenges has been figuring out what classes to take. He says at first he didn't understand what the rules were around electives, for example, and he thought it didn't matter what he took, which is how he wound up in a theater class because it sounded like fun. But he has since learned that other electives could have sped up his progress toward his focus in computer science.
I don't know if this is how it is with all universities, but planning the steps to take and, having an efficient plan is so tedious, it's cumbersome, it's tiring to try to figure out, are these classes available? And, this one's not, okay, maybe I'll put this one here, and then in 2 years, maybe hopefully this one will work out there, kind of thing.
And there's just the amount of time it takes to do both the coding boot camp and community college.
God bless my girlfriend. She's super understanding. I pretty much would wake up, eat, do the morning ritual, and then on the computer until maybe like 5, 6, maybe 7 some nights. Like really bad days, like when there's projects due and then exams, I'll be on the computer till like 10 at night and just going crazy.
So it has been hard to stay motivated, even with the steadfast support of his girlfriend of 2 years. And Tim has found that going to college in this way can be a truly isolating experience.
Whenever I try to talk to people about college, unless they've gone to college, like they don't really understand. Like, you're learning pretty unique things or pretty like specialized information, and it's, as humans we want to share everything, right? Well, like especially with our significant other, we want to talk about things. With coding bootcamp and college, once I start talking about what my problem is right now, it's like, oh man, this is so difficult, I'm trying to figure out how to finish this or do this project. Anything further than that, then I can see it going completely over my girlfriend's head, and then she's kind of just like, and I want to talk about it, but there really isn't anybody that I can talk to about it. Yeah, I mean, other classmates, I guess, but then there's like, that separation from everything being online. So it's weird. Yeah, I think continuing motivation and having conversations with myself has probably been one of the hardest things to deal with.
In Detroit, Michigan, after years of hoping to finish his degree at Morehouse, Paul Carr finally set about making those hopes a reality, planning his work and family life around his new classes. His 2 sons are now in their 20s, and his daughter is in high school. He fits schoolwork throughout his busy day.
I have, working with my family, I have the ability and option to kind of leave the office and work from home. So often I'll leave, around lunch, and then I'll go home and I'll work on Morehouse stuff. I might do some other things for the nonprofit, or I might finish up things that need to be done here. But I'll go home and work on some Morehouse stuff. So whether it's doing my readings or watching the lectures, the recorded lectures that the professors do, or if it's responding to a message board prompt.
And Paul does have live online classes via Zoom some evenings.
Yeah, they're like 7 p.m. So they did it so that it would, for those guys that are taking classes that are West Coast, it's still doable. It's like 4 o'clock their time. So they might be finishing up their day, but so 8 is a little too late because you got guys dozing off. We're old. I mean, I'm almost, guys like getting dozed. If you have a professor that's monotone, you might doze. No different than on campus.
That juggling is tough to manage, he admits. And adjusting to the online format has taken some doing.
I'm somewhat tech savvy, but I'm tech savvy with the things that I know. So this was a new experience, right? I hadn't done like digital campus. I hadn't used these tools, these online tools, and navigating that. It felt just like figuring out where I needed to be on campus. Where is my class? What hall is it in? What office do I need to go to speak to?
I love it. Yeah, the labyrinth of in person, but this was the virtual version.
There's one class that Paul says it really epitomizes the experience for him at Morehouse Online. It's a course in professional communication taught by Morehouse professor Keisha Tassi.
She doesn't allow the online, the challenges to online learning and the online experience to be a crutch or an excuse for us. And that is extremely Morehouse. Like, there are no excuses. You got to get it done. Our neighbor, Clark Atlanta University, their motto was find a way or make one. And it's even though that's Clark's, that's CAU's motto, that's kind of like an Atlanta University center thing, is that we're going to make it happen regardless. And I think that that's very much a part of what it is in the Black community in America too, is that, there's always been adversity. Some are very well known, some are not as well known, that are even ongoing, but we are charged with making it happen. And we hold very dearly the fact that we stand on the shoulders of our ancestors who did more with less often. And so we don't have any excuses. We have laptops and cell phones, and, we have to get it done. So she wasn't taking, any BS from us.
Something that's very unique about me, I think, is behavioral excellence.
That's Keisha Tassi, that Professor Paul was just talking about.
So part of my responsibility is not just to teach the content or the discipline of communication, but to also teach my students behavioral excellence. Because even though communication is one of those disciplines that can apply in many areas, behavioral excellence can apply even more, right? And to an even greater extent. And so the point is not just getting the A, right? The point is behavioral excellence that may not have earned you an A this term, but may earn you an A next term, or that will help you to get that promotion at work, right? But these are habits that we need for successful lives. And so I'm very invested in making sure that my students create behavioral excellence. Ever since term one of the things I hear in the first evening is, "We've heard about you, Dr. Tassi. The word is out. We've heard about you, Dr. Tassi." Or I was, at the last day of the term, I was so scared to come into your class and so the word is out there. Sometimes I get a little sort of like, I'm not sure why the word would be out there, because I think you should be getting that from all of my colleagues, right? I shouldn't be a standout. That said, I take that on as my responsibility because I just think that it's important to make sure that even though it might be, hey, primary reason why I'm back in school is to check that box. I need to make sure that my students, whatever small part that I play, I need to make sure that my students, when they walk away with this degree, that it's applicable to different areas of their life, and that there are some life lessons learned that they can apply in different areas.
For Keisha Tassi, that is what being at Morehouse is about. In fact, she left a tenured job at another university to join Morehouse about 9 years ago.
I'm not at Morehouse by mistake. This is not just a job for me. I have 3 sons, right? 3 Black sons. And I tell my students, when I look at my sons, I see you. And when I look at you, I see my sons. I'm that invested. One of the reasons I'm here is because our student base in particular, they have a target on their back in the Western world, particularly in the United States. And it's meaningful to me to equip them with as much as I can to be able to face the challenges they face simply because they were born into the body they were born into. And whether that is, sharpening the intellect, sharpening the habits and behaviors, sharpening, how we respond to challenges, again, resilience, not taking no for an answer, confidence, challenging others, not just how you respond to others challenging you. Racial pride, all of those things, that is all very meaningful to me. And I don't beat around the bush. We have very direct conversations about that. I'm at Morehouse for a reason, and I could be teaching communication anywhere. I'm teaching communication here, and I'm not going to teach communication here as if I'm teaching communication anywhere. I'm teaching communication at Morehouse as a Morehouse faculty member in service to our mission. And so that comes through directly and that comes through indirectly. Some students get it in the moment. Some students get it later because they're annoyed by the grade, whatever it is, but they get it at some point. And so Morehouse Online has just been an extension of that for me.
To Paul, that spirit that Keisha Tassi embodies is what has made him most excited to be back at college.
It felt good. It was to be reassured and reaffirmed that I am home. I knew I was home. I'm here. I'm back doing exactly what it was that I was doing at 18, 19 years old, 20 years old, that not much had changed.
And he says that just like when he was at Morehouse in person, the students have found a way to support each other. In this case, a key channel has been an online discussion group on GroupMe that one of the students started during the program's orientation.
It was the best thing that could have ever been done, because ultimately what happened is there were a lot of us who didn't know how to navigate things. Who do I talk to in financial aid? And those of us who had been on campus knew the routine. So we were helping. We were helping each other get through.
What a great network.
It was, I wanted to drop the F-bomb. It was freaking amazing that number one, Devin thought to do this, and then everybody jumped in, and some of us have met, but many of us haven't. But I promise you, I would not have gotten through this year, especially taking care of my mom, if I didn't have this network of brothers. It's just like being in the dorms. There's jokes, there's discussions, there's encouragement.
That encouragement has been especially meaningful for Paul, who was caring for his mother in the advanced stages of dementia when the program began.
I mean, when my mom died, these guys, they anteed up privately without me knowing and sent an arrangement for her. They bought trees that were planted in her honor. And we've done this for other people who have had losses, because a lot of us had losses immediately, like starting the school year, calamities hit, people had medical issues or problems with their financing. And we pooled money to get no different than if we were in the dorm and we were taking care of our Morehouse brother in like right there in the dorm. It's been beautiful.
Still, Paul admits that this brand new online program has had some glitches. Probably inevitable for any new program, he stresses.
We talk about being pioneers. It's like the pioneers, the cities are never named after the trailblazers who cut through the brush and carved the path. Nobody knows their names. They're all, Lewis and Clark, and that's it. Nobody knows those explorers that were brave enough to be the ones that carve through the unknown. The town is usually named after those who come later and settle. Right. But it's never the ones who forged the path. And that's us. And we've had discussion. I say, guys, nobody's going to remember this. We have to know that we did this, that we took these lumps and these hits and went through some of the difficulties on figuring out what it's like to be the inaugural class and help Morehouse figure it out. There's Drake, the rapper, he's got a song, he says, and they don't have no trophies for this. We're not getting awards. We do it because we can, and we're cut for it. That our backs are broad enough to carry this load, and it's a sacrifice. And we for me, I do it because I love Morehouse. I really, really love this school.
So it took some doing, but all three of these students, Gina, Tim, and Paul, have been getting into a rhythm. They were back on track and determined to get their degrees. When I met these students about 6 months ago, all of them were near the finish line. They were racking up credits and could see the end in sight. Will they make it? We'll find out on the next and final episode of Second Acts. This has been the EdSurge Podcast. Every week, we bring you explorations of innovation in education. This is installment 2 of our Second Act series, following these 3 returning adult students as they try to finish their degrees. To make sure you don't miss the finale, make sure to follow the EdSurge Podcast wherever you listen. And please take a minute to give us a rating or review. It helps support the show. This episode was written and produced by me, Jeff Young. And I'm on Twitter at JRYoung. Editing this episode by Rob McGinley Myers. And special thanks to Becky Koenig. Music by Blue Dot Sessions. This podcast series is made possible by support from the Lumina Foundation. We'll be back next week with a regular episode of the EdSurge Podcast, and back in a few more weeks with the final installment of Second Acts. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Thanks again to EdSurge, to Jeff, to WorkTripp, to Lumina Foundation, and the generous adult learners interviewed in this episode. And I'm so looking forward to the next final episode in this mini-series to hear how their return to university panned out. Next up on the Edtech Podcast, we are also working on a series which explores the Venn diagram overlap between future of work and EdTech. If that sounds of interest, make sure you're subscribed to get the next episode automatically. Our first guests are the authors of Workstyle, the Sunday Times book bestseller for business. Do go and check out all the show notes at the EdTech Podcast, and see you next time for more episodes. Bye-bye.